In the quiet lakeside town of Vermilion, Ohio, life moved at a gentle pace. But on the morning of November 18, 2009, a frantic 911 call would shatter that peace forever and kickstart a mystery that would take years to unravel. The call came from a sprawling, beautiful home on the edge of town, the residence of 36-year-old Julene Simko and his wife Julene. Around 6 a.m. that Wednesday, as Jeremy slept in his bed, he was shot in the back of the head at point-blank range. Just minutes later, his wife Julene called 911. On the recording, she's hysterical, screaming and crying, telling the operator that someone had shot her husband. She begged for help to arrive quickly, claiming an armed intruder was still somewhere inside their home. When police and paramedics arrived, they found a chaotic and tragic scene. Jeremy was gone, and his wife appeared to be in a state of profound shock and terror. At first glance, it seemed like a home invasion gone horribly wrong. But as investigators began to process the scene, something felt off. The Simko home wasn't just any house. It was a fortress, was equipped with elaborate security systems, multiple surveillance cameras, and even guard dogs. Yet a thorough review of all this security revealed nothing. There was no sign of a forced entry, no footage of an intruder, and the dogs hadn't made a sound. Investigators combed every inch of the property for evidence of a third person, but they found no foreign DNA, no unfamiliar fingerprints, no footprints leading to or from the house. Adding to the puzzle, despite Julene's claims of an intruder, nothing was stolen. The house was filled with valuables, but they were all untouched. The police were left with a baffling question. If there was no intruder, what really happened inside that house? The focus of the investigation inevitably began to shift towards the only other person present that morning, Julene Simko. To the outside world, Jeremy and Julene had a picture-perfect life. They'd been married for about 10 years and were not just partners, but best friends. They ran a successful tree service business together, meaning they spent nearly all their time with one another. Friends and family described their bond as incredibly close. However, Jeremy wasn't always an easy person to be around. He was described by many as a hothead. He was known for being loud, strict, and demanding perfection from his employees, often cursing at them on job sites. This abrasive personality meant Jeremy could, and did, create enemies. When questioned, however, Julene insisted that despite his temper with others, Jeremy never mistreated her. She did admit to one incident early in their marriage where he slapped her, but she said she slapped him right back, and it never happened again. According to her, their relationship was solid, and Jeremy had no known active enemies who would want to harm him at the time of his death. Her story was consistent. An unknown person had broken in and tragically ended her husband's life. But the physical evidence simply didn't support her account. As detectives dug deeper, they uncovered layers of the Simco's private life that complicated the narrative. The couple was facing significant financial stress. They were trying to secure a large bank loan to buy several acres of land next to their property, land they were already using as their own. But their credit report showed some late payments, and the bank was hesitant. Julene acknowledged this caused stress, but she maintained it was an external pressure, not a source of conflict between her and Jeremy. Just a few days before the murder, the bank officially denied their loan application. Was this financial strain a potential motive? The investigation also took a turn into the most intimate aspects of their relationship. While searching the home, police found sexually explicit materials, and most notably, a handwritten master-slave agreement. This discovery painted a picture of a complex and unconventional dynamic behind closed doors. Prosecutors would later suggest this wasn't a partnership of equals, and it became a point of intense scrutiny, leaving many to wonder about the true nature of their marriage. Despite the mounting inconsistencies in Julene's story and the lack of evidence for an intruder, the case went cold. The initial investigation stalled. There was no confession, no murder weapon was definitively identified. And while suspicion was strong, the district attorney felt there wasn't enough concrete evidence to secure a conviction. For nearly 5 long years, the murder of Jeremy Simko remained an unsolved mystery hanging over Vermilion. Julene continued to live in the home where her husband was killed, maintaining her innocence and her story of a phantom intruder. Then, in October 2014, almost 5 years after the murder, a grand jury was presented with the case. The culmination of years of forensic analysis and re-examination of the evidence finally led to a breakthrough. Julene Simko was arrested and formally indicted on multiple charges: aggravated murder, 2 counts of murder, felonious assault, and tampering with evidence. The woman who had presented herself as a grieving widow was now being accused of being a cold-blooded killer. The case finally went to trial in September 2017. It was a bench trial, meaning a judge, not a jury, would decide Julene's fate. The prosecution laid out its case meticulously. They argued that the intruder theory was a complete fabrication. They pointed to the lockdown house, the lack of any foreign evidence, and the sophisticated security systems that showed no breach. Their narrative was simple and chilling. Julene Simko was the only person with the means and opportunity. They contended that she shot Jeremy as he slept, then staged the scene, placed the hysterical 911 call, and concocted the story of an intruder to cover her tracks. The prosecution presented testimony from multiple witnesses, including the first responders who were at the scene and the investigators who worked the case for years. They highlighted every inconsistency in Julene's statements and contrasted them with the hard physical evidence, or lack thereof. When it was time for the defense to present its case, they made a stunning decision. They called no witnesses. They rested their case without presenting any testimony, relying instead on the argument that the state had not met its burden of proof. They argued that the lack of a clear motive and the absence of a murder weapon meant there was reasonable doubt. After weighing all the testimony and evidence, the judge delivered the verdict. Julene Simko was found guilty on all counts. The judge concluded that the evidence overwhelmingly pointed to her as the perpetrator. The intruder's story was deemed not credible, and the only logical conclusion was that she had killed her husband and attempted to conceal the crime. Julene Simko was sentenced to 28 years to life in prison. She later appealed her conviction, but it was upheld. The court affirmed that the evidence was sufficient for a guilty verdict. Today, the case of Jeremy and Julene Simko stands as one of northeastern Ohio's most haunting domestic homicides. It is a story that began with what seemed like a loving marriage and ended in a brutal act of violence within the walls of their own home. It leaves us with lingering questions about what truly happens behind closed doors and how well we can ever know the people we love. The fortress the Simkos built to keep danger out ultimately could end to protect them from the danger that was already inside. Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into fascinating cases. We'll see you next time.